Don't worry, babe. I'll call you once I'm checked in. Lisa's voice rang through the SUV speaker, smooth and familiar. Christian gripped the steering wheel with one hand, feeling a pang of guilt for the unease he couldn't shake. Maybe it was just the long hours at work wearing him down. "I'll miss you," he replied, masking his doubt with a smile that no one could see. "Miss you too," she said lightly before hanging up. The drive home was quiet, the city lights flickering past like blurred memories. As Christian walked through the door, he dropped his keys on the table and exhaled. It was just another business trip. She'd been on plenty before. This was nothing new. Time passed slowly that evening. He worked through the bills, paid a few lingering fees, and cracked open a beer. The house felt too quiet. Midnight came and went. The ticking of the wall clock was like a heartbeat. When Christian finally slouched onto the couch, his phone buzzed against the glass tabletop. A moment of confusion passed before he picked it up. The call was from Lisa's number. He furrowed his brow. Why would she call now? Curiosity mixed with annoyance as he placed the phone to his ear. But he didn't say anything. There was no hello, just silence, as if waiting would clarify the intent of this unexpected call. Then he heard it. "Your husband really thinks you're working? What an idiot." The voice sent an immediate jolt through Christian. He sat upright, muscles tensing. The tone was too familiar, and his stomach dropped when he recognized it as Brian's, his best friend's. "Don't worry, he's always been a sucker," Brian continued. The sound of footsteps, the creak of bed springs, each detail painted an unwelcome image in Christian's mind. He clenched the phone so hard his knuckles whitened. "That clueless loser is paying for everything while you enjoy my Big Johnson." Brian's words twisted in his ear like venomous barbs. Christian's breath caught in his throat. His vision blurred for a moment as blood roared through his ears. He wanted to believe it was a mistake, a cruel joke, anything but what he was hearing. He forced himself to listen. "He's too dumb to realize I checked out of the marriage a long time ago." Lisa's voice, casual and cold, echoed across the line. A laugh followed. "Don't bother mentioning him now. He makes me puke." The phone slipped from his trembling hands, thudding onto the carpet. For a moment, there was only silence, thick and suffocating. Christian stared ahead, unseeing. The words played over and over, like a twisted mantra. Rage coiled deep in his chest, mixing with hurt until the two became indistinguishable. He wanted to scream, to break something, anything to match the chaos inside him. Instead, he forced himself to breathe. He picked up the phone, his grip more solid this time, and ended the call. The silence returned. Christian walked to the kitchen in a daze, set the phone on the counter, and leaned against the sink, staring out at nothing. He replayed moments in his mind. The small lies, the unexplained absences, the forced smiles. Signs he had ignored. He felt like a fool. He had trusted them both. Not anymore. Christian stood at the edge of their bedroom, his gaze scanning everything that had once held meaning. Sunlight barely seeped through the drawn curtains, casting shadows on the floor. He took a deep breath and stepped inside, feeling the weight of every memory, every moment they had shared. The air felt heavy. He walked over to the closet, gripped the handle, and yanked it open. The scent of her perfume hit him first, sweet, familiar, and now sickening. He grabbed a handful of dresses, silk brushing against his hands, and tossed them onto the bed without a second glance. Each garment represented a lie, every stitch a betrayal. A plan began to form, a cold, logical path through his grief. No rage-filled outbursts, no confrontations. He would not be reduced to a screaming caricature of himself. No, he would be better. He would be smart. Reaching up, he pulled down her jewelry box. The contents clinked softly as it landed on the mattress. He flipped the lid open, staring at the necklaces and earrings he'd bought her over the years. Anniversary gifts, apologies, thoughtful surprises. He swallowed the bile, rising in his throat. What a waste, he muttered under his breath. He reached for a packing box and started loading her things. The motion was mechanical, grab, place, repeat. His movements were quick and efficient, as if lingering would somehow poison him. His mind replayed Brian's words, the laughter, the casual cruelty. It was like a broken record, each repeat hardening his resolve. A knock at the door snapped him from his trance. He moved to answer it, pausing when he saw the reflection of himself in the hallway mirror. Eyes bloodshot, jaw clenched, a man on the edge. He ignored the knock and went back to work. The bedroom dresser was next. He yanked open the drawers, pulling out clothes and tossing them aside. An envelope slipped out and fluttered to the floor. He picked it up and hesitated. Their wedding day photos. Lisa's smile, bright and confident, stared back at him. His fingers tightened, crumpling the photo. He tossed it into the trash pile. As he packed, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. He glanced at the screen. It was Lisa. He stared at the phone for a moment before turning it face down. She could wait. He wasn't ready to speak to her, or ever, if he could help it. Hours passed. The pile of her belongings grew. Christian wiped sweat from his forehead, exhaustion creeping in, but he didn't stop. He moved to the bathroom, clearing out her cosmetics, perfumes, the little bottles she had arranged meticulously. He dumped them into a box without care. Her presence was everywhere, and he wanted it gone. In the kitchen, he found her favorite coffee mug, a gift from their honeymoon. He lifted it, thumb tracing over the faded lettering. Without thinking, he hurled it into the sink. It shattered, pieces scattering. The sound was satisfying, final. By evening, the packing was done. The boxes were stacked near the door, labeled and ready for their destination. Christian stood back, surveying his work. He grabbed a pen and paper, scrawling out a note. Enjoy the garbage. He taped it to the top box and exhaled. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. The next day, he loaded the boxes into his car, each lift burning in his muscles. He drove through the city, mind blank, until he reached Brian's apartment. He climbed the steps and left the boxes outside the door, the note prominently displayed. He didn't knock. He didn't wait. He turned and walked away, each step lighter than the last. Returning home, Christian sat at the dining table. The place felt emptier, quieter. He grabbed another sheet of paper and wrote a second note. Bitch, you belong to the streets. Goodbye. He placed it on the polished wooden table where she would find it. Next, he picked up the phone. He called his lawyer, explaining what he needed, divorce papers, a restraining order, everything to sever ties. The call was brief, efficient. He hung up, feeling a sliver of control return. He packed a bag for himself, simple essentials. As he zipped it shut, he paused, taking one last look around. This had been their home, their life. Now it was nothing more than a shell. He left the keys on the table, beside the note, and walked out the door. Outside, the air was crisp. Christian inhaled deeply, the cold biting at his lungs. It felt good, real. He got into his car, turned the ignition, and drove away without looking back. Hours later, he checked into a small motel on the outskirts of town. The room was plain, the bed hard. He sat on the edge, head in his hands. Anger still simmered, but exhaustion dulled its edges. He lay back, staring at the ceiling. Christian Oro would bring new battles, new pain. But for now, he let himself feel the weight of everything. The phone buzzed again, another call from Lisa. He turned it off, placed it face down on the nightstand, and closed his eyes. The first step was done. He had ripped out the poison. Now came the long, grueling process of healing. Lisa's fist pounded against Brian's door, each knock louder than the last. Her heart raced as she glanced up and down the hallway, paranoia creeping in. The door finally creaked open, and Brian stood there, shirt unbuttoned, hair tousled. What the hell, Lisa? His tone was annoyed. She pushed past him without waiting for an invitation. Where is he? She demanded, pacing across the living room. I've called him 100 times. He's ignoring me. Her voice cracked at the edges. Brian shut the door slowly and leaned against it. You think he'd just sit there and wait for you to come crawling back? Lisa stopped pacing, hands shaking. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She turned to face him, eyes wild. He was supposed to be angry, sure, but then he'd listen. He'd try to talk to fix things. Brian snorted, crossing his arms over his chest. And you thought you'd have both of us wrapped around your finger forever? He shook his head, a smirk playing at his lips. You sure about that? Her chest heaved, breath coming in short gasps. You don't get it, she whispered, more to herself than to him. I had control. I had it all figured out. Brian walked over, grabbing a bottle of beer from the coffee table. He took a swig, barely looking at her. Well, you miscalculated. He dropped onto the couch, stretching his legs out. And now it's coming apart. Too bad. Lisa's hands clenched into fists. Why are you acting like this? She stepped closer, her voice rising. You were part of this too. He tilted his head lazily, the amusement fading from his eyes. Sure, Lisa, I was part of it, but I never needed anything from him. You did. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. So, tell me again how you thought this would go. She turned away, frustration bubbling over. I need to find him. She picked up her phone, scrolling through messages. No replies. No missed calls. Nothing but her own desperate text staring back at her. Brian laughed, the sound harsh and cruel. Why? So you can beg? Cry? Beg some more? He stood up, tossing the empty bottle aside. Face it, he's done with you. Her shoulders sagged. You don't know that. Don't I? He walked past her, opening the fridge. The clink of bottles filled the silence. Look, I don't care what you do, but you might want to stop embarrassing yourself. It's pathetic. She stared at him, feeling the ground shift beneath her. Pathetic? The word echoed in her mind. You think you're better than me? Brian turned, a new edge to his gaze. I think I'm done with this conversation. He grabbed his keys. Find your own way out. The door slammed behind him, leaving Lisa alone in the empty apartment. Her knees buckled, and she sank to the floor. How had it spiraled so fast? She pressed her palms against her temples, willing herself to think. Days blurred together. Lisa's routine became frantic calls, desperate texts, and long hours of staring at the clock. She tried reaching out to mutual friends, hoping someone had heard from Christian. Each response was a dead end. Whispers started at work, colleagues stealing glances when they thought she wasn't looking. She felt their judgment, the barely hidden gossip. Are you okay? A coworker asked one day, her voice tight with fake concern. Lisa forced a smile, feeling the mask crack. I'm fine. She walked away before she shattered completely. At home, her phone buzzed again. For a split second, hope flared. But it wasn't Christian. It was Brian, his name flashing on the screen. She answered, voice tight. What do you want? Just checking in, he said, amusement in his tone. You know, you've become quite the spectacle. Her grip on the phone tightened. Screw you. Come on, Lisa. Don't be like that. There was a pause, a hint of something darker. You can't handle this, can you? She clenched her jaw. You think I need you? I think you're running out of options, he replied coldly. And honestly, I've got better things to do. The line went dead. She stared at the phone, ball rising in her throat. Alone. Completely alone. She hurled the phone across the room, the screen shattering on impact. The fragments scattered, much like her life. The next morning, she stood in front of the bathroom mirror, dark circles under her eyes. Her reflection looked hollow. She splashed water on her face, trying to shake the exhaustion. It didn't help. She leaned against the sink, forcing herself to breathe. A knock on the door pulled her back to reality. She opened it slowly, expecting another wave of pity or judgment. Instead, it was a letter slid through the mail slot. She picked it up, her fingers trembling. It was a notice from Christian S. lawyer. Divorce papers. She sank into a chair, reading each word carefully. Legal terms blurred as tears spilled down her cheeks. He really was done. No second chances, no forgiveness. Just an end. Lisa tried to steady herself, but the weight of it crushed her. She thought of calling Brian, but the memory of his voice, mocking, dismissive, stopped her. There was no one left. She curled up on the couch, staring at the ceiling. Hours passed, darkness falling. The whispers at work, the looks of pity, the silence from Christian, it was all crashing down. She was alone, and for the first time, truly understood what that meant. The cafe was quiet, the soft hum of conversation and the clinking of coffee cups creating a gentle backdrop. Christian sat at a corner table, staring at the foam in his coffee. It had been weeks since he walked out on his old life, and though the initial anger had subsided, he still felt hollow, alone but determined to move forward. A voice interrupted his thoughts. Excuse me, mind if I sit here? He looked up. The woman standing in front of him, had kind eyes and a gentle smile. She gestured to the empty chair across from him. The cafe was crowded now, and without thinking, he nodded. Thanks. She set down a small stack of books and a steaming cup. It's busy today. Christian nodded absently. Yeah. Silence settled between them, comfortable rather than awkward. She pulled out one of the books, its spine worn and pages dog-eared. Christian found himself glancing at it, curious despite himself. What's that? He asked. She looked up, a hint of surprise. Oh, this? She turned the book around, revealing the title. It's a collection of poetry. I run a little bookstore downtown, always looking for hidden gems. He hadn't intended to keep the conversation going, but something in her voice pulled him in. A bookstore owner, huh? He leaned back, a small smile playing on his lips. Bet you see all kinds of people? Her eyes brightened. You wouldn't believe the stories I hear. People come in looking for more than books sometimes. Like what? Sometimes they're looking for an escape, she said softly, her gaze meeting his. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Christian felt a lump in his throat. Yeah, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I get that. Over the next few weeks, Christian found himself returning to the little bookstore. It became a sanctuary of sorts, a place where the past couldn't reach him. Layla was always there, organizing shelves, recommending books, or simply chatting with customers. She had a way of making people feel seen. One rainy afternoon, Christian lingered by a display of novels, pretending to browse. Layla appeared at his side, carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. She handed one to him. On the house, she said with a smile. You look like you need it. Am I that obvious? He joked, accepting the cup. She leaned against the bookshelf, watching him. I think everyone who comes here is looking for something, even if they don't know what it is. He took a sip, savoring the warmth. What about you? Me? She tilted her head, as if considering. I think I'm just trying to make connections. Real ones. The world feels lonely sometimes. Christian nodded. He understood that all too well. They fell into an easy silence, the rain tapping against the windows. Can I ask you something? She said suddenly, breaking the quiet. Sure. Why do you come here? He hesitated. It would have been easy to deflect, to make a joke and change the subject. But something about Layla made him want to be honest. I'm trying to rebuild, he said, his voice low. I'm trying to remember who I am without all the baggage. She nodded slowly, as if she'd known he would say that. You're not alone, you know. Her words lingered in the air. Christian felt a warmth spreading in his chest, a spark of something he hadn't felt in a long time. Thanks, he said quietly. One evening, they closed up the bookstore together. Layla turned off the lights, leaving only the soft glow of a street lamp outside. They stepped into the night air, their breath visible in the cold. Walk with me? She asked. They strolled down the quiet street, talking about everything and nothing. Christian found himself sharing stories he hadn't told in years. Memories of childhood, dreams he'd let go of, and moments that had shaped him. Layla listened intently, her eyes never leaving his. When they reached her apartment building, she paused. This is me, she said, a hint of reluctance in her voice. Christian nodded, unsure of what to say. Would you like to come in? She asked, her voice soft but steady. He hesitated. Part of him wanted to say no, to protect himself, to keep his distance. But he was tired of living in fear, of letting the past dictate his present. I'd like that, he said finally. Inside, they sat on the couch, a quiet comfort settling over them. Layla turned on a small lamp, casting a warm glow around the room. She poured them both a glass of wine, and they talked late into the night. Laughter mingled with the clink of glasses, and for the first time in months, Christian felt the weight on his shoulders begin to lift. At one point, the conversation slowed. Layla reached for his hand, her touch gentle. You deserve happiness, she whispered, her eyes searching his. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to let go of the past, the betrayal, the pain. Slowly, he squeezed her hand. Maybe I do, he said, his voice trembling with hope and uncertainty. They sat there, hand in hand, as the world outside moved on. For that moment, there was no past, no future, just two people finding solace in each other's presence. It was fragile, but it was real. And for Christian, that was enough to take the first steps toward healing. The rain hammered down, turning the street outside Layla's bookstore into a glistening sheet of water. Christian was locking up for the evening when he saw the figure standing in the shadows. At first, he thought it was a stranger, some lost soul wandering aimlessly. But as she stepped into the light, his breath caught in his chest. Christian, Lisa's voice cracked, raw from shouting or maybe crying. She was drenched, hair plastered to her face, makeup running in dark streaks. Christian, please. He didn't respond. He turned the key in the lock, his movements precise and deliberate, as if refusing to let her presence shake him. But his heart pounded in his chest, not from longing or sympathy, but from a cold fury that had simmered since the day he'd left. Lisa stumbled closer, her shoes splashing in the puddles. "I've been looking for you," she said, desperation coloring her words. "Everywhere. I need to talk to you." He finally turned to face her, expression unreadable. "Talk," he echoed, his tone flat. "What's left to say?" She took a step closer. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was stupid and cruel. I wasn't thinking. I've lost everything, Christian. I've lost you." Christian's jaw clenched. He wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it. "You lost me the moment you decided I was just a fool to amuse yourself with," he said, his voice as cold as the rain pouring down around them. She reached for him, but he stepped back, letting the rain create a barrier between them. "Please," she begged, her hands trembling. "I've changed. I'm different now. I see what I did. I see what I lost." "Different?" He shook his head, anger seeping into his voice. "People don't change overnight, Lisa. They don't get to throw someone's life into chaos and then pretend they've had a revelation." Her eyes filled with tears. "I know I hurt you. I know I ruined everything. But you have to understand, I was lost. I thought," she trailed off, her voice breaking. "You thought what?" he demanded, taking a step closer. The intensity in his eyes made her flinch. "That I would always be there? That I'd forgive you because you needed to find yourself?" She dropped to her knees, rain pooling around her. "I've paid for it," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. "I've suffered every day since you left. You have to believe me, Christian. I'll do anything. Just a second chance. Please." Christian stared down at her, unmoved by the display. He remembered all the sleepless nights, the humiliation, the pain of knowing that the woman he had loved and trusted had mocked him behind his back. "Second chances?" he said slowly, his voice low but lethal. "Second chances are for people who show genuine remorse. You don't regret what you did, Lisa. You regret getting caught." Her shoulders shook with sobs. "That's not true. I regret everything. I was stupid. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. Please, Christian." She reached out, grasping at the fabric of his coat. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me." He pulled away, disgust evident in his eyes. "Funny. I seem to remember you saying I made you sick." Her eyes widened with shock and shame. "I didn't mean it," she whispered. "I was lying to myself. I was cruel because I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" His voice was sharp, cutting through her excuses. "Of happiness? Of love? Or just afraid of being held accountable for your own choices?" She shivered, rain soaking through her thin clothing. "I don't know. I was lost, confused. I thought I wanted freedom, excitement. But I was wrong. Oh, no, I need you." Christian shook his head. "You don't need me. You need a safety net, a fallback. But I'm done being that for you." The bookstore's door creaked open, and Layla appeared, concern etched across her face. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her eyes flicking from Lisa's crumpled form to Christian's stony expression. Lisa's gaze shifted to Layla, realization dawning. "Her," she spat, her voice laced with venom. "You replaced me with her?" Layla stepped closer, unshaken. "This isn't about me," she said calmly. "It's about you and what you did. Leave him alone." Lisa's face crumpled again. "You don't understand. He's mine." Christian's patience snapped. "I'm not yours," he said, his voice firm. "Not anymore. You gave up any claim when you decided I was disposable." She collapsed further, sobbing openly now. "What am I supposed to do?" she whispered. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem, he replied, his tone devoid of sympathy. He turned away, taking Layla's hand. I'm done, Lisa. Go find someone else to manipulate. Without looking back, he walked away, leaving her in the rain. Layla squeezed his hand, offering silent support. You okay? She asked softly. He nodded, though his chest felt heavy. I will be, he said, his voice steady. Eventually, as they walked away, Lisa's cries faded into the distance. Christian felt the weight of finality settle over him, but he also felt something else, a sense of freedom. For the first time in a long time, he was ready to move forward, leaving the past where it belonged. Brian stared at the blinking cursor on his computer screen, sweat beading on his forehead. The office, once a place of camaraderie and ambition, now felt like a pressure cooker, ready to burst. The rumors had started small, a murmur in the hallway, a passing glance, but they grew louder with each passing day. Now, colleagues avoided him, their eyes averted, conversations halting when he entered the room. Brian, his supervisor, called, gesturing for him to come in. The man's expression was hard, mouth set in a thin line. Close the door. Brian did as he was told, his hands clammy. He sat, his chair creaking under him. The silence stretched, suffocating. You know why you're here, don't you? The supervisor asked, folding his hand atop the desk. Brian swallowed. I don't. Save it. The supervisor leaned forward. This isn't about office gossip. This is about trust, integrity, and professionalism. You've damaged this company's reputation, and your own. Brian's jaw clenched. Whatever people are saying, it's personal. It shouldn't. Personal? The man's voice rose, incredulous. You think dragging your sordid affairs into our professional world is just personal? Clients have walked away. Our partners are questioning us. And frankly, Brian, we can't have someone so careless representing this firm. The weight of those words hit him like a punch to the gut. You can't mean you're done here. The supervisor's tone was final. Pack your things. The elevator ride down to the lobby was torturous. Each floor brought him closer to rock bottom. As he stepped out, a few former colleagues watched from a distance, some whispering, others turning away in disdain. Their judgment was a crushing weight on his shoulders. He pushed through the revolving doors, rain pelting his face. Brian stood there for a moment, letting the cold water seep into his clothes. The downpour seemed fitting, a pathetic fallacy for his crumbling life. He pulled out his phone and dialed Lisa's number. No answer. He tried again and again until, finally, her voicemail picked up. Lisa, pick up, please. We need to talk. His voice cracked. I need you. He hung up, feeling emptier than before. With nowhere else to go, Brian found himself at the bar where he and Lisa used to meet. The dim lighting and sticky counters felt familiar, but not comforting. He ordered a drink, then another, trying to drown the shame. The bartender, a gruff man with tired eyes, watched him with a mix of pity and indifference. Hours passed. At some point, Brian noticed a couple laughing at a nearby table. The woman's laugh, light, unrestrained, reminded him of Lisa. A surge of bitterness rose in his throat. He approached them, drink in hand, and slurred, "What's so funny?" The man stood, protective and ready. "Back off," he warned. Brian sneered. "Think you're better than me? You think she'll stay loyal?" He laughed bitterly. "Good luck." The bartender intervened, grabbing Brian's arm. "That's enough. Time to go." Thrown out into the rain, he stumbled down the street. He dialed Lisa again, his hands trembling. This time, she picked up. "What do you want?" Her voice was cold, detached. "We need to talk," he said desperately. "I've lost everything. The job, the respect. All of it. You and me, we can start over." She was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her words cut deeper than any insult. "There's no you and me. There never was. It was a game, Brian. It's over." No, he shook his head, rain mixing with tears on his face. "You can't mean that. We were in this together. Were we?" Her voice turned harsh. "You were convenient. That's all. Now you're just a reminder of how badly I screwed up. Goodbye, Brian." The line went dead. He stared at the phone, disbelief washing over him. Lisa, the one person he thought he understood, had cast him aside as easily as she'd cast aside Christian. He laughed bitterly, a hollow, empty sound. The next day, Brian walked through his empty apartment, the silence oppressive. He picked up a photo of himself and Lisa from happier times. Their smile seemed fake now, a cruel mockery of what he'd thrown away. He smashed the frame against the wall, shards scattering across the floor. There was a knock at the door. He ignored it, but it persisted. Finally, he yanked it open. A former friend, one of the few who hadn't outright abandoned him yet, stood there. "Hey," the man said cautiously. "Thought you could use some company." Brian's laugh was bitter. "Company? You think I want someone around to see this mess?" His friend stepped inside anyway, uninvited. "Maybe you don't want it, but you need it." He looked around, taking in the unwashed dishes, the bottles on the table. "You've hit rock bottom. Maybe it's time to admit you messed up." Brian sank into a chair. "I thought I had everything. I thought I could have it all." His voice was hollow. "Now I have nothing." "You did this to yourself," his friend said bluntly. "You betrayed people who trusted you. You hurt people." "I know." Brian buried his face in his hands. "I know." Silence stretched between them. "You can keep wallowing," his friend finally said, "or you can figure out how to make something of the ashes." Brian didn't respond. He wasn't ready for redemption. Maybe he never would be. All he could see was the wreckage of what once was, a shattered career, a ruined reputation, and the knowledge that he had no one to blame but himself. The first light of dawn broke through the window, painting the room in soft hues of orange and pink. Christian watched from his balcony, coffee steaming in his hand, feeling the warmth spread through his fingers. The mornings used to be the hardest, a reminder of what was lost. Now, they were a promise of what could be built anew. It had been months since the night Lisa had begged in the rain, and in that time, he had chosen to focus on himself, to heal in ways he never thought possible. "Hey?" Layla's voice was gentle, and he turned to see her leaning in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket. Her hair was tousled from sleep, but her eyes were clear and kind. "Hey," he replied, a small smile playing on his lips. She walked over, her bare feet padding softly across the floor. "Mind if I join?" "Always welcome," he said, sliding over on the bench to make room. She nestled in beside him, and for a moment, they simply sat there, sipping coffee and watching the world wake up. "Another nightmare?" she asked quietly, without pressing. He nodded. "Yeah, but not as bad this time." Layla placed a hand on his. "You don't have to go through it alone." "Not anymore." He squeezed her hand, grateful. "I know." He took a deep breath, inhaling the crisp morning air. "For a long time, I thought moving on meant forgetting, pretending it didn't happen. But you know it doesn't work that way," she finished, her thumb tracing small circles on his hand. "Right? Moving on isn't about forgetting. It's about not letting it control me anymore." He met her eyes, finding comfort in their depth. "You've helped me see that." She smiled, a soft, genuine smile that lit up her face. "You've done the work, Christian. I'm just here to support you." The journey wasn't easy. Trust didn't come naturally anymore. Every time Layla stayed late at the bookstore, Christian felt a pang of unease. He hated it, the doubt, the fear. It wasn't fair to her. One evening, as they closed up shop together, he voiced his concern. "I need to tell you something," he said, hands stuffed deep in his pockets. She turned the key in the lock, then looked at him. "I'm listening." He hesitated, the words catching in his throat. "Sometimes I get scared when you're late, when I don't hear from you. It's not because of anything you've done. It's me." Layla nodded slowly, processing his words. "You have every right to feel that way, given what you've been through." "I hate it," he admitted, his voice raw. "I hate doubting. I hate being paranoid." She stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. "It's okay to be afraid. Healing isn't a straight line. And I'm here. Whatever you need, whenever you need it." For the first time, Christian believed her. It wasn't a line or a platitude. It was real as the warmth of her hand in his. Days turned into weeks, and Christian continued to rebuild. He took up running again, pounding the pavement until his legs burned and his breath came in ragged gasps. The physical challenge pushed out the mental weight, even if only for a little while. He found new hobbies, cooking with Layla, volunteering at a local shelter, learning how to repair old furniture. Each new experience was a step away from the past and a step toward the person he wanted to become. One evening, as they sat on the living room floor surrounded by half-finished DIY projects, Layla asked, "Do you think you'll ever forgive them?" Christian paused, paintbrush in hand. "Forgive?" He thought about it. "I don't know. I don't think it's about forgiveness for them. It's about letting go for me." She nodded, understanding. "That makes sense." "It's funny," he said, a hint of bitterness creeping into his voice. "I used to think revenge would make me feel better. That seeing them suffer would be enough. And is it? No." He set down the brush. "Their suffering, it's just noise. It doesn't give me back what I lost. It doesn't erase the betrayal." Layla placed her hand on his shoulder. "Then what does?" He met her gaze, and for once, he didn't have an answer. "I think it's this," he said after a moment. "Moving forward, building something real, something that matters." Meanwhile, Lisa and Brian's lives spiraled downward. Brian's career never recovered. No one wanted to be associated with the scandal, and the few who did were quick to abandon him once they realized how deep his bitterness ran. Alone in his dingy apartment, he drank to forget. But the memories always came back. Lisa's betrayal, Christian's cold rejection, the realization that he'd ruined everything for nothing gnawed at him like a disease. Lisa fared no better. Her reputation was in tatters, her relationships fractured. Friends drifted away, tired of the drama, unwilling to be pulled down by her mess. She spent her days in a small, windowless apartment, haunted by memories of the life she had thrown away. Christian's silence was their greatest torment. No amount of apologies or desperate pleas could bridge the chasm. They were left to face the consequences of their choices, alone. One night, as Christian and Layla walked along the waterfront, she asked, "Do you ever think about reaching out to them?" He considered it, the cool breeze ruffling his hair. "No," he said finally. "They don't deserve that space in my life." He looked at her, a smile playing at the corners of his lips. This is what I want to focus on." She smiled back, squeezing his hand. "Me too." As they walked on, the past faded further into the distance, replaced by the promise of what lay ahead. For Christian, rebirth wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming his self-respect, finding happiness again, and leaving the pain behind. He had won, not by destroying those who hurt him, but by refusing to let them destroy him. The day the letter arrived, the sun shone brightly through the kitchen window, highlighting the cheerful yellow walls Layla had painted herself. Christian was finishing a late breakfast, savoring the smell of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the crisp scent of autumn outside. Life had found a rhythm again, steady, peaceful, and filled with small joys. That was when he noticed the envelope. It was plain, unmarked except for his name scrawled across the front in an unfamiliar hand. Christian frowned, turning it over in his hands. Layla noticed the change in his expression as she entered the room, a mug of coffee cradled in her hands. "Everything okay?" she asked, concern flickering across her face. He hesitated, then held up the letter. This was in the mail. She set her mug down and stepped closer, her brow furrowed. "Looks strange. Are you going to open it?" Christian nodded, the hesitation in his movements betraying old wounds he thought had healed. With a deep breath, he slid his thumb under the seal, tearing it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the handwriting uneven and desperate. "I'm sorry. I destroyed us, and I have no excuse. I hope you find peace." The words were simple, but they struck like a blow. Christian's grip on the paper tightened as he read and reread it. The silence stretched between him and Layla, heavy and tense. She watched him carefully, waiting. "Is it?" she began, her voice low. "It's her," he said, his voice rough. "It has to be." He dropped the letter on the table, as if it burned. After all these years, Layla placed a gentle hand on his arm. "What are you feeling?" Christian shook his head, the mix of emotions threatening to spill over. "I don't know. Angry? Confused? Part of me thought this was over completely. It's been years, Christian. Maybe it's her way of finding closure. Closure. He repeated, the word bitter on his tongue. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. Closure for what? For ruining lives and walking away? For thinking a letter changes anything? Layla watched him pace the room, her expression patient but firm. Maybe it doesn't change anything, but it doesn't have to change you either. He stopped, her words sinking in. Layla's steady gaze held his, grounding him. She was right. He was no longer the man shattered by betrayal. He had built something better, something unbreakable. He let out a shaky breath and walked over to the kitchen sink, the letter still in hand. What are you going to do? Layla asked softly. Christian glanced at the paper one last time. The apology felt hollow, too little too late. I'm done letting her have any part of me, he said, and with that he struck a match. The flame danced briefly before catching on the edge of the letter. He held it over the sink, watching as it curled and blackened, ashes drifting downward. Layla moved closer, her hand slipping into his. They stood there together, watching as the last remnants of Lisa's words turned to ash and smoke. When it was done, he let the burnt fragments fall into the sink, washing them away with a stream of water. Christian turned to Layla, his eyes tired but resolute. It's over. She squeezed his hand. Is it? He nodded, a weight lifting from his chest. Yeah, it really is. They walked outside, the crisp autumn air wrapping around them. The world felt brighter somehow, the colors more vivid. Layla guided him to their favorite bench in the garden, a quiet place they often visited to talk or simply sit in silence. Birds chirped in the trees, and the wind rustled the leaves, carrying away whatever residue of the past still clung to him. Did you ever think this would be where you ended up? Layla asked, leaning back and closing her eyes. Christian considered her question. No. Back then, I didn't think I'd make it out at all. I thought. He paused, the memories briefly pulling at him. I thought I'd be stuck in that darkness forever. But you're here now, she said, opening her eyes and looking at him. You fought your way back. Not alone, he said, his voice soft. You were there. You showed me it was possible to trust again, to love again. Layla smiled, warmth radiating from her. You were always capable, Christian. I just reminded you. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the sounds of life around them. Eventually, Christian spoke again. You know what the worst part was? What? Feeling like I wasn't enough. Like their betrayal was my fault. He shook his head slowly. But it was never about me. No, it wasn't, Layla agreed. It was about them, their choices, their flaws. Christian nodded, a sense of peace settling over him. I hope they find whatever it is they're looking for. I really do. But it's not my burden anymore. It never was. They lapsed into silence again, this time content and free. The wind picked up, scattering leaves around their feet. Christian reached for Layla's hand, holding it tightly. He knew life would continue to bring challenges. There would be hardships and heartaches. But for the first time in a long time, he felt ready, truly ready, to face whatever came next. As they sat together, surrounded by the quiet beauty of the garden, Christian realized he had already found the peace the letter spoke of. Not because of an apology, but because he had chosen to let go. To move on. To live. I already have, he whispered, and Layla, sensing the weight of his words, simply squeezed his hand in silent understanding.